Welcome to the OVW podcast, the unofficial podcast of Ohio Valley Wrestling. My name is Jack Minogues.
And I'm Brian Hines.
Today we are sitting down with another OVW superstar, this time in the form of Kash Daniel. Kash, how are you?
I'm great, man. Thank you guys for having me.
No, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Welcome, sir.
I know it was kind of late notice, but we're really glad you made the time to sit down with us today. It's a pleasure. So you've been in the public eye in the state of Kentucky really for the past decade, and for a majority of that time, people have been asking you, like, when are you going to wrestle? Your name's Kash Daniel. You're born with a wrestler name. You're cool as hell already. You're jacked. People have been wanting to see you wrestle. You went very viral. You were on, like, Pardon My Take, the hugest sports podcast of all time, for a Stone Cold Steve Austin-esque tribute celebration after a huge win at UK. And it kind of just, people have been wanting it here in the Commonwealth for a long time. Why is right now the right time for you?
It was the perfect time for me now. I've always wanted to do it, is the thing. And I've actually, coming out of college, I actually turned down the WWE 3 times.
Whoa.
3 times. And I can break that down in the later part of the podcast. But, my life has been, it's been a roller coaster. I'm a Southeastern Kentucky kid, grew up a huge wrestling fan. Actually stemmed some of my, I would guess, character that I portrayed out on the football field, which gave me my confidence, my edge to go out there and throw myself against 300-pound linemen and, go out and compete in the SEC. And if people tell you that played it, that sometimes it doesn't get just a tad scary, they're lying to you. Yeah. So you got to be able to pull something from within yourself that gives you that edge, that gives you that confidence to go out and play, because at the end of the day, you are a performer for 60,000 up to 100,000 people if you play at Neyland Stadium or down in Texas A&M. At the end of the day, the field is the stage, your helmet's the microphone, and the way that you play is your act. So I would stem from guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin, granted the Stone Cold at the end of Florida, showmanship like The Rock. I can even remember, like, in my interviews, like, sometimes when I would get to that place, it's very hard for me to turn it off. So I think UK learned real quick to give me about 20, 30 minutes after a game to let me cool off a second before they throw a microphone in my face, because, that charisma, sometimes arrogance would come out, because that's what I had to use to go out there. I wasn't the biggest, I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't the strongest, and I wasn't the best player. But what gave me that edge was my attitude, and knowing that if I'm meaner than the guy across from me, then I got a pretty good chance of winning that down and being able to not only survive out there but thrive. And so that's where it all stemmed from. And luckily, Al Snow gave me a great opportunity coming out of college to do a couple spots at some shows with Cash Flow, and I had such a great time. And for people that don't understand, because I've had this conversation with a lot of people, because some people just don't understand wrestling. And for me, it is the purest form of entertainment.
Yeah.
I mean, American culture isn't mentioned without professional wrestling.
100%. Yeah. This is a conversation. You can ask Tiny Brian back there. I say that all the time. Wrestling is the zeitgeist.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you got football, basketball, baseball, NASCAR, and wrestling. That's what I think of America. You think of Hogan slamming Andre.
Right. Yeah.
You think of Stone Cold and The Rock. You think of, guys like Eddie Guerrero, different guys that I grew up watching and loving. And so being able to now finally tie it all together, for me personally, it took me a while to figure out exactly who I was once football ended, because that was my whole life.
Yeah.
My whole life was born in training, born in trying to outwork somebody and be the best at a specific sport. Now, I played baseball and basketball too, but football was my thing, and I loved it. Very thankful for it. Thankful for my time at the University of Kentucky, which ultimately has led me here. So it's a great time for me. I know that we're maybe 3-4 years postponed on it, but now my body's right, my mind is right, more importantly. And I'm very excited for this opportunity and thankful to Al Snow and everyone at OVW. It's been great so far.
that kind of being in the system of football for so long, and then one day all of that being over, did you have a tough time transitioning, trying to fill that void?
Oh yeah. The biggest hurdle that any athlete has to face is the day when it ends, because you have to put so much into it to play at the level that. Now, granted, I didn't go on to play professional football.
Sure.
But even at the level to even get to not only Division I, but in the SEC.
The SEC, man. Yeah.
And different nowadays, because now you can start out maybe at a lower level college, and then with the transfer portal and different things like that, work your way to the SEC. But in those days when I was coming up, you either made it or you didn't.
Right.
And you were kind of stuck in wherever. I'm not going to say stuck, but because that's a bad term to look at it. But you were in the position you were in for 4 years, because if you try to transfer, you'd have to sit out a year, lose a year of eligibility,
Right.
and then being able to try to make yourself a spot on the team and make it be a starter and different things like that. It just didn't work like it does now. But ultimately, everybody knows football is a violent game, and it's a very emotional game.
Right.
And I think that for me, and going back to my age and everything, I was a very emotional player. I'm a very emotional human. And that's just how I am. And that's why I think I was so drawn to wrestling and the interaction that wrestling gives fans and people around the world. There's no other fan interaction like there is in wrestling.
No.
So, yeah, it's but the transition part, yeah, it's very hard. And I've actually talked to a lot of guys that were coming out of college, or some of my guys that even went on to play in the NFL. One of my guys, he had 4 or 5 years in the league, and then
It's not a bad run.
no, not at all. And then one day it ended, and I was like, hey man, the first thing you got to do, come work out with me. I think that's one of the biggest things for a lot of athletes, is that once they stop performing in that sport, they lose that aspect of training. And training's what got us there. Training's what kept us mentally clear. Different training, obviously. We don't have to train like an athlete anymore, or an SEC football player or an NFL player, but just having that outlet, because a lot of people looked at football as an outlet. It was definitely an outlet for me. And the weight room was also an outlet for me. So my training really kicked in, and really just focusing more so on the mental health side of things and finding out exactly who you are and what your purpose is in this life, because your whole life you're thinking, my purpose was to play football and be a football player. And a lot of guys, unfortunately, can't ever let that go. Fortunately for me, it did take me a couple years to let that go and finally figure out, exactly what I want to do and, who I want to be. And my purpose has never been clear. God put me on this earth to lace up these boots and step in the middle of that ring. I firmly believe that. And a lot of people are going to firmly believe that once they see it live in action.
So how long have you been training for wrestling?
Well, we actually, so in the summer, I reached out to my buddy Carl Anderson. Shout out to the club.
Yeah. That was as a weird wrestling nerd. Whenever you were on their podcast all those years ago, and a UK fan, I was just trying to explain to all my other UK fans, this is so cool. He's on the Good Brothers podcast.
Yeah, man.
That was sorry.
No, all good. And I developed a relationship with Carl and Big LG and AJ Styles when I was in college. When we played in the Citrus Bowl against Penn State, and I think Nike got on our butts pretty good. You're no longer allowed to do this, because we were the first ones to do it. Everybody had customized cleats.
Okay.
And I had the Bullet Club skull on the toe of my cleat, and it had Styles, Anderson, Gallo beside it, and then on the side it had the two sweets, the hand gesture.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then it said GB for life, so
Yeah.
Good Brothers for life. And so I've always been in contact with Carl. And he set me up with his trainer, Roger, up in Cincinnati to go and train. But with my job in medical sales, going back and forth during the week in Cincinnati, it didn't really pan out for me. So I did get some prior training probably toward the end of last summer.
Okay, right on.
And then reached out to Al and told him that this is what I want to do. And he said, okay, we have the academy starting up in July. And then, unfortunately, I had to have surgery. And then the next semester started in January. So been training since January the 11th, and we actually just graduated the beginners course through the OVW Academy. So shout out to everybody there at the Academy. Coach Doug Basham's great. Coach De Niro, he's great. I've learned so much every single time that I step into the ring, and looking forward to the intermediate course and the advanced course, and then right on TV.
Is what's the difference in mentality between a wrestling coach and a football coach?
Oh man, night and day. Football's more chaotic in my opinion. There's a lot of yelling and screaming, a lot of get it now. Like, you have to understand it and get it now, or you're not going to play. With wrestling and with Coach Doug and with Coach De Niro, they really break down the why behind everything. And it's not necessarily of either you get it now or you're out, kind of thing.
Right.
Because like in football, like if you don't get the right reads or if you don't understand the playbook, you're out, you're not going to play. And so essentially they basically just stop caring, because they want the guys there to produce. And, in wrestling, fortunately for me with my athletic background, I've taken it very quickly, very coachable. So I really dial into what they're saying and understand that, okay, if they want it this way, I'm going to do it this way and do it to the best of my ability. And so fortunately with how they've structured the training and how Al has structured the entire academy, it makes it a lot easier for even someone who didn't even play football or I think we had two or three people that didn't really ever play organized sports, but have picked up on it quickly enough because of the way that De Niro and Doug explain it and coach it to us.
What's something that sticks out? What's the most interesting thing you've learned at OVW Academy so far?
The most interesting thing, I would say the most interesting thing is timing. I would say the timing of everything, because especially for me and other athletes, especially in football, you're lightning quick. Like, you have to be able to go from A to B in lightning speed. And in this, it's like, it's a dance. Slow down, very, very slow it down. So that's been my biggest critique so far from not only Al but from Doug and De Niro. It's like, hey, you don't have to go 1,000 miles an hour. This is a dance again. So pace yourself and understand ring positioning, understand who you're working with, what they're good at, what they're not good at, and then go out there and put on a show. So I'd say timing's probably been the biggest thing that I've learned so far.
Was there anything else that you a habit you had to break from football training into wrestling training? Sounds like you wanted to go. That's what you were used to. Is there any other habit that you kind of had to dial back on?
Staying big in wrestling. That's the thing, because in football, low man wins.
Right.
So the biggest thing for me was, okay, if I'm in a headlock, stay up tall. If I'm getting put in a headlock, don't stay down. Keep my head up, face the crowd, do the work. And really at the end of the day, just putting it all together into one piece and making it flow like water, So that's probably been the biggest thing.
What was your first wrestling memory as a fan?
As a fan, so a big shout out to my cousin, Landon Hale. He is actually an indie wrestler up in the New England area, and he's wrestled all over. He's wrestled Mustafa Ali. He's been to New Zealand, Germany, down in South Asia, and he actually was the one that got me into wrestling. He was a big Rey Mysterio fan growing up, and we spent a lot of time together. And so we would watch Velocity, we would watch Heat, we would watch Monday Night Raw and SmackDown, and that's when I brought up Eddie Guerrero, because Eddie Guerrero was like my first superstar that I followed like rigorously. Like, rest in peace, Eddie Guerrero, man, because he was the one that really introduced me to it. And seeing him go out there and hit the frog splash and the storylines between him, Chavo, and Ray, and young Dominic, who's now killing it. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably my earliest memories. And I'll never forget my first wrestling match that I went to. It was a WWE live event, ironically, in Pikeville, Kentucky, which will be there later this April.
April 25th, OVWTix.com.
Absolutely. And So I was there, and I got to see Batista, Big Show, Ray, Eddie, all the guys that me and my cousin just grew up watching, and ever since then, every chance I've got to go to a live event, or sometimes when Raw would come to Lexington when I was in college, would never miss a chance to go. So,
you mentioned earlier, because we can't blow past this now that we've kind of breached the subject of WWE. You turned down WWE
3 times.
3 times.
Yep.
So when was the first time?
The first time was immediately coming out of college. So this was when COVID hit, and I was training to go to the NFL. That didn't work out, obviously, and they reached out to me, and I'd been dealing. There's a difference between playing injured and playing hurt, just like there's a difference between wrestling injured and wrestling hurt.
And you were hurt.
I was injured.
You were in. Okay.
Big time. I had a surgery every off season. I've had both shoulders done, ankle, hand, minor back procedure. I wouldn't even call that a procedure, just more like shots that I'd have to get. And at the time, physically, knowing how physical wrestling is and the training that it takes to be able to perform there at the highest of levels, I just wasn't there, and I had to get my body right. The second time, unfortunately, there was some personal stuff going on within my family that I just couldn't make it at the time. And then the third time, I don't know what it was. It was fear, I guess. It was fear of failing. It was fear of, and it's as stupid as it sounds now, because the person that I was then, as far as I know and everybody else knows, is dead. I killed that guy, and I'm much better off for it. Afraid of what people would say, or the heat that I would get, because I'm a guy that naturally gets heat no matter where I go. I mean, that's just, it is what it is. You either like me or you hate me. There's no in between, and I'm okay with that. But at the end of the day, I know that with the training that I'm getting here at OVW, with the talent that I'm surrounded by, the sky's the limit for me. And my job here now is to make enough noise and to make enough, progress within myself that they hear that noise all the way in Orlando. So that's my job and my goal now.
Who's someone you are looking forward to chopping it up with in OVW?
Ooh, that's a good one. There's a couple people I'm looking forward to. First off, being Cash Flow, because there's got to be a battle of the Cashes.
Yeah, it writes itself, man.
Yeah,
it writes itself.
I think we should have like a loser leaves town match or something like that.
Well, and you mentioned Eddie Guerrero. Cash Flow's got a good frog splash of his
He
own.
does.
Maybe you
That's
pull out a
true.
frog splash.
Maybe so. But I know he's got some rigorous chops too.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I got to be on the lookout for those. Another guy would be Coach Doug and De Niro. Just because they're the guys that brought me into this, and have coached me up to this point, and so they may have taught me everything, but they've not taught me everything that they know. So that's going to be looking forward to that as well.
Excellent. So you're going to be kind of having, a huge moment out in Pikeville as part of Hillbilly Days on the 25th of April, end of this month. It's your neck of the woods. Kind of to tie it all back together, the people in the crowd are going to be the exact same people that were saying, Cash, I can't wait until, why aren't you wrestling yet? Why they're going to be the exact same people there. You mentioned that the old guy is dead. We don't fear stuff anymore. We're not afraid of stuff anymore. What is the emotion that replaced fear or doubt?
Confidence and a level of violence that people haven't seen in a wrestling ring in a long time. I think that's one thing that I can bring to the table. And not only thinking I can do it, but knowing that I can do it, and knowing that I can do it to the best of my ability, that we've not seen, in my opinion, in OVW in a long time. The thing about it is that you go back behind the curtain and you see the pictures on the walls, the Dave Batistas, CM Punk, Randy Orton, Brock Lesnar, John Cena. At the end of the day, there is going to be one picture and one name that hangs above the rest of them all. And you got the chance to talk to him right here today. And that's just exactly how it's going to go. It's not you can call it arrogant, you can call it confidence. You can call it whatever you want. I'm calling it the truth. And a lot of people are going to understand the truth, not only in Pikeville, but when I officially get going every single week. And no matter who they throw out there to me, my job is to take head after head, place it on Al Snow's desk, and say, who's next?
Guys,
Keep bringing.
I couldn't think of a better way to end it than that right there. Kash Daniel, everybody. Thank you so much for
Thank you
sitting
so
down
much.
with us, Kash.
Hey, thank you guys. I appreciate it.